Welcome to the Obvious Leadership Podcast, where we dive into practical leadership insights that are, well, obvious. Your hosts have walked the talk, and now they're sharing their knowledge, strategies, and advice. Let's jump into today's episode and explore the world of leadership with your hosts, Joey and Omar.
There we go.
Good morning.
Morning, brother. Morning. How you doing today?
Doing well, man. Doing well. How about you?
Hey, we had we were out in the sun all day yesterday, so a little burnt.
Yeah. Man, Texas heat comes in quick, man. Let me tell you.
Oh, yeah. It's reading like it's 93, 95 degrees, but it feels like it's 110. Right. And I will say this, right? So I'm from California originally. We got a dry heat out there. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go in the shade, it's not as hot.
Yeah.
In Texas, you go in the shade and it's just as hot because it's so humid. You just can't escape it.
Right?
You know?
Yeah. Most definitely.
So let's go ahead and get started, brother.
Yeah.
You have any fun stuff happen over the weekend?
Not really, man. Just did a lot of yard work, you know what I mean? Just spending time. We spent time with the family as well. But other than that, man, just trying to clean up around the house, get ready for summer, right? That way we can hopefully spend a little bit more time outside.
Oh yeah. And bro, like that's the biggest thing, like managing the time to like make sure you get everything done that you need to get done. And you know this just like I do. You realize there's so much that like really doesn't get done.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm not just talking about like at home, right? We can relate that to the work life too,
Yeah.
where as a leader, you really got to learn how to manage your time for you personally, and you got to learn how to delegate stuff to other people.
Right.
Because there is no way that you're going to get everything done that you want to get done, even in a perfect world.
Yeah. You definitely got to learn to prioritize, right? You got to have those bullet points that need to get done immediately. And then you can come back to that stuff that need to get done as well. But, it's a little bit further down the totem pole, talk about delegating, man. So actually this weekend, so we did some yard work, got the grass cut. But I had my kids out there helping me cut the grass. Man, I got the yard front and back done maybe in about an hour, 15 minutes. Usually that's a 2.5 hour occurrence, because I'm out there doing it myself. But man, I got them out there and they were doing a great job. So, man, it was awesome to get in and get out, not stay in that heat as long as I needed to, you know what I mean? So.
Oh, big time. And this is where a lot of people don't realize it too. Like the more you get people involved, like with your kids, I guarantee your kids aren't really looking at it as a chore. It's more like a game, right? They're learning what dad's doing and kind of maybe seeing who can do it better or right. But it's an investment, right? You're putting time in and it's all those memories you're gonna have to look back on. And that's where you just really can't take that away. So I'm gonna correlate that to like work stuff, right? When was the last time that you had a leader who just would not give up the reins and it was everything they, I gotta do this, I gotta do that, and they didn't have time for things, right? And I know I've had leaders like that, and that made me feel like, well, shit, I guess we, not just me, but we as an employee, we as a team really don't matter to you, do we? Like, because we never see you, we never hear anything from you, we never get any feedback. And I'm not saying that you need to be present, but I mean, you look at numbers, you see what we're doing, but we're not getting any feedback as far as like the direction that, the company's going, or the direction that we're going, if we need to make a pivot towards something, right? And it makes you feel unseen. But, right, and feel free to jump in when you want, bro. But think of it like this: you as a leader, if that was you taking somebody under your wing and you're delegating some of the tasks that you would normally do to them, like this, even the simple task, right?
Yeah.
because maybe they got some more free time, maybe got that expertise in that area that you're looking at, but you're able to give that to them to be able to run it. It may not get done the way you want it to get done exactly, because they're still
Yeah.
learning it.
Right.
But one, you're getting them involved in the business to be able to jump up into a leadership role eventually, right? Because you're giving them those skills that they need within that organization.
Yeah.
Two, you're making them feel seen.
Most definitely, man. I feel like a lot of leaders, just like you said, they don't know when to let go of the reins, man. And I think that that's a disservice to everybody involved. I mean, you hit the nail on the head, man. It's like that leader is so overwhelmed with all the stuff that they have to do that they neglect any kind of coaching, any kind of recognition, any kind of, like in the moment kind of progress, that they should
Yeah.
be relating to other people on the team, like that it could be so much more beneficial. And also, just like you're saying, man, that, like, yes, they can pivot on, on a dime if they were involved a little bit more. But honestly, you know what? A lot of times the reason that we see those leaders is when corporate brings down a big change on what needs to get done, and or a
Yeah.
different way they're going to get done, right? So that's really the only time that you see them, and then their list keeps growing and growing and growing, right? They really don't see the benefit in having somebody take some things off their plate, give a little bit more responsibility, and allow for those situations to come into play where you can coach those people to where, hey, look, let them get it done, but maybe I'll give them a little bit of coaching to get it done my way, right? That's really what you should be doing as a leader.
Big time. And that's the biggest miss for, I'm not going to say all leaders. I'm going to say it's a big miss I see with new leaders, because they're still trying to figure everything out and they want to do everything themselves. So they don't really build like a culture around this or like a routine around this. And that's a different story as to why they do that, because that also goes into not getting the proper training as a leader, not having a mentor as a leader, right? That's a completely different topic. But then you also have maybe some old school leaders that are stuck in their way. And if I was in that, if I was in those shoes, or if I was working with one of those teams, I would probably want to be under the new leader, because at least we have a chance of things changing, as opposed to somebody that this is the way we've always done it and this is the way it's going to stay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, like sometimes people get in a rut and they say that, hey, look, this is what's always worked, right? And this is what's got us this far. But, sometimes, that needle stops moving, and
Mm-hmm.
that, everybody needs to have a little bit of change so that you can push past that stale point. You know what I mean? To make
Yep.
sure that the business continues to grow. And sometimes, like when it comes to, tenured leadership, sometimes they lose sight of innovation, of what got them to that point.
Oh yeah, big time, bro. Have you? That kind of made me start thinking of something. I'm googling it right now. Um, have you heard of the Pareto rule principle?
No, no.
You've heard of the 80-20 rule, right? Or the 80-20 principle, right? 20% of what you do accounts for 80% of like your results. 80% of what you do accounts for like 20% of your results,
Oh, okay. Okay.
right? That 80-20 principle.
Yeah.
I had to look up the name. The name is the Pareto principle. What you saying just hit that on the head with me, with something that I personally as a leader, and this is something I learned. And it's funny because with my teams, when I taught them this, it was one of the hardest things for them to realize, because people love to complain. And I would tell them, if you're going to come to me with a problem, I don't mind listening to the problem, as long as you bring something to the table that we can take action on. I'm not saying it's going to be the right action. I'm saying at least you're trying to find answers to the issue. And I would explain to them, when all you do is complain, your brain literally shuts off to any new information or any potential changes that can happen.
Right.
So we're not going to focus on our attention on, that 80% of the issue. We're going to acknowledge it, and we're going to shift that to be 20%. And we're going to focus the majority of our attention on actually bringing results, right? We're going to focus our attention and shift it from complaining to finding solutions. Because once you start writing down solutions, once you start bringing solutions to the table, your brain starts really ticking, and you start moving in the right direction. At least you're not stuck in that rut anymore.
I mean, honestly, that's part of the reason why, like I said, I've always had people complain and ask, like, hey, why don't you give me the answer? And so a part of the solution is finding the solution, right? I'm going
Yeah.
to point in the right direction. Then you can come back to me. We can talk about what you think we should do, right? Because once you find the answer, it may not be what you think is correct. It may not be what may be best for the company. It may not be what's best for the customer interaction or for the customer relationship. You know what I mean? So,
Yep.
a lot of times it's like we find those things and we interpret it, right? But just like you said, I think what happens when you go away from complaining and just like focusing on the problem at hand, I feel like it goes from negative to positive, right? And I think
Yep.
that's what everyone needs. Once you have a positive outlook on something that you think something can get done or can get fixed, I think you can definitely take that step forward and get things done.
Yeah. You remember back in the day in schools when you have those like reading posters on the wall? It just
Yeah.
reminds me of that. Like your mind is like a parachute. Doesn't work unless it's open.
I mean, 100%, man. I definitely agree. Because if you don't have an open mind towards things, you're never gonna You're never gonna get forward. Get the team forward. You're not gonna move your mindset forward. Everything kind of follows if you're sit there and you're closed and you want to handle everything and you don't want to let anybody get their hands in the pot to move
Yep.
everybody. You kind of get stuck in that rut, man.
Yeah, and bro, when it comes to taking vacation and time off of the organization, right? If you can learn to delegate, do you know how much easier your life as a leader is when you are actually away? Like, I remember at the first district I took over, I had trained up two people to be able to essentially take over for me, right? One wanted to move up in the organization, the other one was they were fine, right? That's the position that they were planning to like retire from essentially because that was the highest that they like the highest achievement in their entire family, which I ain't gonna knock it, right? Uh, but it's still giving them a little bit of taste as to what the position is like to see if we can get them to move up and to see their skill set. But I would always split it up between them so I could literally take time away. Because one of the things I hated was that feeling of, man, if I take time off, like my store's gonna go to shit. If I'm not there to run it, it's just not going to work. And I just remember seeing so many people like would delegate it in their minds to, yeah, if we're in a group and yeah, I'm gonna be taking some PTO, and the region would be like, okay, so who's gonna take over your market where you're gone?
Mhm.
Well, I asked so and so, one of the other district managers, if they can check in. I'm like, okay, and I'm thinking in my head, is that really the way you should go? Like, shouldn't your team from within have somebody there that would be able to move up to a district role and show that they're ready for it, or at least that they're vying for it, and you're giving them that opportunity to showcase what they got and step up into that role? And can you imagine how proud you would be as an existing district manager to be able to promote several people into different roles like that?
Yeah,
And you
man.
don't have to worry about taking time off of work. Like
Yeah. I
missed
mean, seriously,
opportunities.
I think the best reward for going on vacation is first of all not getting a phone call,
Yeah.
right? Not stores burning down, the districts, going crazy, and people are, going at each
Yeah.
other's throats. But also, when you come back, you don't have a whole bunch of fires to put out. You know what I mean? So you come back to just ready to move forward, ready to take the team with the next step, and just check off that next thing on your list. You know what I mean? You come back and it's like you never left. I mean, that's I think the best reward that, when you train people and they do what they need to do. And, it's not that you're appointing them when you're going on vacation. It's that you're getting them to do those things before you leave so that you can coach them to do it the right way so that when you do leave, everything's running the way it should be.
Big time. And I think that's the scariest thing for a lot of leaders because I guarantee you, and I know this with some of the conversation I had, it's like if they can do that without me, then why am I around?
Yeah.
And that's the wrong mindset.
I think that, we talked about it before, like so you want to have influence on the people, of course, that work with you, right? But if you want to
Mhm.
make impact, market as a general, right?
Yep.
So you want to impact the things outside your store, right? And to a district level, to a market level, you know, you can't be at your store all the time doing the things that need to be done for your store, right? If you
Yep.
train the delegate your people to get those things done effectively and efficiently, you'd be able to make a little bit more impact outside your store, leading to, bigger innovation, and you'll be a part of that.
Big time. Right? Different projects, all that. And your leadership can actually see that, hey, your team runs as well-oiled organization on their own. Like that's something that we need to bring on to maybe can you help out one of your peers out in this area? Because I've been shipped out to different parts of the country to help out in different aspects from recruiting to training uh, different leaders in different markets. And that's one of the biggest recognitions that you'll be able to get. Because, and people know this, as you go up the ranks in leadership, there's fewer and fewer and fewer positions to be filled. Um,
Right.
but what a lot of people don't realize is that if you can impact an organization at a very good level, right, at a high level, if you can make really good impacts, a lot of organizations are willing to create a position just for you in the interim until something actually opens up.
Right.
And that, I don't think a lot of people realize that. I think they think that jobs and positions are set in stone and this is the only ones I have to go with. And it's like, no, you'd be surprised. There are a lot of positions that get created because somebody was creative and innovative at good at what they did, but they didn't have something up here. So they created something in between until something opened up to get them to move into that role. And it does a few things for the organization. It allows them to be able to test out different strategies because now at least they have somebody that they're not going to lose because they're giving them better typically pay, more responsibility, um,
Right.
what people recognition, what people are looking for, and they can test out to see if this is a viable position to maybe expand into other positions, multiple positions, and help out, right?
Yep.
Because that's what a lot of people realize is it's stagnation typically in leadership roles. Yeah, I think it's driving. I think it's driving loyalty. Yep,
Yeah.
driving loyalty. Anybody out there, correct me if I'm wrong. I've had friends that have been in this organization. So it's talking about enterprise rent-a-car, right? And this book was, a while back when it came out. So a lot of things have changed with enterprise. Enterprise is it's not a publicly traded company, right? It's a private company. It's a private business. Probably one of the largest private businesses out in the world. And for the longest time, they were just family owned. But then they've taken over different rental companies and they've brought on board like different franchisees, right? So now they got to incorporate all that into their organization. But what I like about the concept of their business model, two things. First, and this one that's always gotten me, uh, you have to be in the organization and you have to essentially start off at the sales floor. Doesn't matter what position you're going to take in the company, that is, you got to understand the way the company works before you can do anything for the company, right? So you have to have an actual understanding of the organization, which I think is brilliant.
Right.
The second thing is they force you out of the company, right? And what I mean by that is you need to progress with them, and if you don't, you're going to get essentially moved out, right? In a lot of their roles. But when it comes to leadership, you're not going to be there for 30 plus years.
Hmm.
They're going to move you out so that they can bring fresh leadership into the organization. And it's like
Okay.
and here's the cool thing, they don't just like push you out and boom, you're on your own. They actually help, I think you start like a consultative company and things like that.
Wow.
Right. So it's a pretty cool concept. But from like for me, I've had different roles in different organizations, different hats. Uh, And one of my biggest complaints has always been with recruiters.
Mhm, mhm.
How, and I don't know if you're familiar with this, I personally am. If you have recruiters that don't have an understanding of how your business model works, have no idea of what people actually do that they're hiring for, they have no
Right.
concept of what they're doing. How good are they really at bringing people on board? And how much of that is kind of like throwing spaghetti on the wall and seeing what sticks,
I
right?
mean, honestly, that's the first line of defense for getting the right person in the right position, right? I mean, because like if you're not getting the right person that has the right mindset, that has a skill set, that has the ability to be coachable, to get them to where they need to be, to put them in this position to be the most successful that they can be, then you're missing the target, right? I mean, if you're bringing somebody in that doesn't know how to do anything, and just based on what that recruiter is hiring for, it could be missing the mark.
Yeah. And that's the biggest thing. Because so when I did recruiting, I had an understanding because I literally was an associate at one time, store manager, district manager, and did a whole bunch of different things. So I knew what we were looking for in individuals, right? And I could always compare my individuals to the recruiters that had no background in the organization or relevant, right? A lot of them were, okay, we popped out of college and went into a corporate role.
Yeah.
Cool. You did sales? No, I worked at the mall. Okay. What kind of companies do you guys recruit for? Uh, yeah, so it was pretty much, it was some kind of retail, but it wasn't like a service-based retail organization. I was like, okay, cool. Uh, I'm gonna interview all the people that you interviewed just so you know. So if I'm not on board, we're not bringing them on board.
Well, I mean, honestly, like I think that's one of the things that kind of missed the mark, man. It's one of the things I had requested from my recruiters and the companies whenever they would be hiring somebody for my position. They had this program where they would just basically hire somebody based on the online assessment, based on a phone interview, right? And
Yeah.
then somebody like the district manager or whoever would do the interviews, but then I wouldn't get to interview them, right? So as a store manager, like I wanted to be able to start that relationship. If
Hmm.
they're hiring somebody, I want to have that conversation, kind of set some expectations, and also get some expectations from that person, right? Because when they're
Yeah.
coming in, you set those things honestly. Like I used to have them write a couple things down, right? And you come back 6 months and say, hey, look, this is where you wanted to be. This is where I think you are. Where do you think you are? You know what I mean? Have a conversation around development and say, hey, man, you used to come in with that fire. Sometimes people get burnt out, or sometimes we miss the mark in our leadership and say maybe we're not you know, leading to attract them to want to do better, right? And so
Yep.
I think that is very impactful to have the manager have some sort of play on that hiring process.
Oh, highly agree with you. When I was a DM, I used to have my store managers that I would hire for, or locations I needed to, fill spots for. I'd have them sit in on one of the interviews. I would either
Hmm.
have them do the phone interview and I would coach them. I wouldn't be like, okay, here's the thing. I would have them watch me do a few phone interviews first, and then I would pass the reign on to them so that they can do a phone interview. And I would explain to them what we're looking for in the resume and what kind of questions to ask, and more importantly, what kind of responses you're looking for. I don't know if you've ever used it, if you've ever done the interview process, but one of the things I learned and I learned a lot from HR people when it came to this, right, was the STAR method. The STAR method, if you're not familiar with it, stands for situation, task, action, results, right? Essentially, you're going to set up the situation, right? So that's the first thing. Then after you ask that question, you're looking for them to tell you what tasks they did, what actions they took to achieve those tasks, and then what results they achieved from those tasks. And on phone interview, you're not looking for big things. You're just looking to see if their information does correlate very well with the resume, and then if we should move them on to an in-person interview. And here's the dirty little secret: if somebody's already looked at your resume and they're calling you, they're already banking on having you come in person to do an interview. If they don't, it's because you did something on the phone interview to screw it up.
Yeah,
And
I mean, basically, they're just calling to verify that,
yep.
hey, this is the person that we want to interview, right? Because they already saw what they saw on the resume, and they're saying, "Oh, hey, man, let me call this guy." You're like, "I think we want to get him to come in, but you can't answer any of your questions. You're on topic." And they're like, "Okay, no, I don't think that was the right fit." Like, man, that person don't kind of match.
Exactly. And I think that's where some people, like, if you're job hunting, I think that's where you might be missing the mark. If you got a phone interview, chances are they want to bring you in. You just got to be careful what you say on the phone interview and be prepped to answer your questions in the STAR method, right?
Yeah,
Situation, task, action, results. If you can answer in the STAR method, and there's a few more tidbits, but that's the biggest one I'll give. If you can answer in the STAR method, you're likely going to move on to the in-person interview, and there you go. But yeah, that's the biggest thing, and it makes it easier for the actual manager that's going to be dealing with the people to feel like they have a say in the type of person that they're getting on their team. Um, and that's huge, because if you put in different personalities that don't mesh, that tends to create a lot of tension and a lot of issues. And you have to understand where your team is coming from as far as leadership to be able to train and coach. You can't put somebody who needs a lot of attention with a team where the leadership can't give them that TLC to develop them, because you're just setting up everybody to fail,
right.
right?
Well, I mean, honestly, part of my interview process, what I used to love doing is just, of course, we got to follow the process. We got to ask the same questions. You know what I mean? To every candidate. But you also try and have a conversation with them, because not a lot of people do interview prep, and they
Mm-hmm.
come in super nervous, right? And like, I used to have people tell me all the time, man, like, I was super intimidated when you were doing the interview process. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm over here, like, I'm trying to have a conversation with you. Like, but I guess it's because I wanted to show neutrality, right? I'm
Yeah.
not to show that I'm on your side, but also I'm trying to, pull a little bit more information, try to make it like a conversation. You know what I mean? To make them more comfortable, to figure out exactly what they're trying to say. Because you're right, man. Not a lot of people follow that method, and they miss the mark on answering those questions, right? Because as an interviewer, I'm wanting to see, hey, what was the situation, right? What was the task? What action did you take? And what were the results, right? And that's exactly what I'm looking for. It's kind of like when we used to answer questions in English, right? They used rewrite part of the question and
Yeah.
relate to the question directly, right? I mean, it's part of that process. Honestly, that it's ingrained in my head to follow problems that way, just to make sure, first of all, because if you don't get the question right, like, let's say you misunderstood the question and you're stating, hey, what the situation was, sometimes, like, oh, well, like, uh, that may not relate to what I was trying to ask, and we can repivot after you kind of give your situation, and say,
Yep.
hey, I think, this is more along the lines of what I was looking for, with that problem. Is there, a different part of this that you can expand on?
Oh yeah, big time. And I'm going to give you a little bit of story. Uh, I had done an interview one time for somebody I was going to bring on board. And he was a referral from one of my employees that was there since day one when I took over this particular district. So I was like, all right, this is a good employee. His numbers are good. And he's like, this guy has, similar background to us. And he wants to he left the industry, but he wants to come back. And I told him that we were looking. I was like, all right, cool. Yeah. Have him apply. Let me know what his name is, and I'll pull his info, and I'll give him a shot. Going through the interview, the phone interview, I was like, all right, cool. Couple of good questions. It just wasn't a fit,
Hmm.
right? All It was a lot of complaining, right? If you're ever doing an interview, don't complain about the organizations you're with. We get it. You're leaving. You left for certain reasons. We get that. But it was just that he couldn't give me like really good examples of stuff that he achieved. It was always stuff that the team achieved, never what he did. And it's like, I don't care about the team. I care about what you did, right? Tell me what you are going to bring to us, what you're bringing to the table. So I was like, all right, cool. So I left it at that. Boom. But apparently he reapplied, and it didn't come to me. It went to one of the recruiters. And remember I told you like recruiters didn't touch my people? Yeah, he had told her that he was looking to apply in my district. So she reached out. He wasn't really good at interviewing, but he pretty much gave her like a big old sob story. And I'm like, I get it, but we're not that kind of organization. And she just kept pushing. I was like, fine. I was like, I didn't need to have any positions filled. I was actually already staffed. I had room to bring other people on board if I wanted to. I just didn't because I knew in a couple of months they're going to start the whole, oh, we have a hiring freeze. We need to let go underperformers. Right.
Right.
So I was like, I don't want to go through that. But she kept insisting. So I was like, all right, fine. Set him up for an interview. We'll go from there. And she really, really wanted me to bring him on board. And I told my regional, I was like, bro, this is going to be a big mistake. I was like, you tell me which direction you want me to go. I don't want to bring him on board. Do you have open positions? I was like, technically I do, but I'm performing. None of my employees are, underperforming. None of my stores are underperforming. We're actually above all our metrics, so it's not like I need them.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you have open positions, and my leadership is getting on us for having open positions. I was like, all right. I kid you not, in less than 3 months, he was gone. And it was probably one of the worst hires I've ever done in my life. And it was just constant, like the guy was constantly fighting. And I was like, bro, I got no issue or beef with you. You're on the team. Cool. We're moving forward. This is what we need to do. There is no, oh, I'm new. As like, you are past underperforming at this point. Like, you're past that period where you can underperform and it's acceptable.
Right.
And it was just constant issues, constantly being late, constant complaints from customers. I was like, and I remember where I had to reach out to HR to start the entire process and like, okay, this is the issues we're having. You all tell me, because I don't single people out for underperformance. I used to have the training course where I would bring in my underperformers for certain metrics to train. And I was like, here. And he would be like, well, I'm not underperforming. I was like, okay, cool. Are you in this meeting right now? Yes. Okay, so you're underperforming. It doesn't matter what you think. I am literally telling you what the numbers are telling me. You see these numbers. I don't know what planet you're on. But yeah, we ended up letting him go for not just performance issues, but just no call, no show for like a few days. And he literally tried coming back into work. And I was like, bro, this is not how this works.
So I talk a lot about how, like, hey, leaders should be doing this, leaders should be doing that, leaders should have this mindset. But honestly, like, man, part of me thinks that sometimes we should have a class on how employees should also have etiquette. You know what I mean? Employee and how to be a good employee, how to be a good team player, because sometimes I think sometimes people just don't get it. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Sometimes if you miss the mark as an employee, you're not only holding yourself back, but you're holding the team back. And
Yeah.
if team, sometimes you can perform, but if the team isn't performing, then like you're holding everybody back, and everybody's not going to take that step forward. Maybe take a little bit off your plate, right? But I mean,
Exactly.
as important as it is to be a leader, and like we discussed before, you have to be able to pivot and and cater your leadership to how that personality is. I think that employees also should do the same.
Oh yeah, bro. And that's a lot of it also has to do with people not being trained properly, right? And them coming from an organization that doesn't have the right leadership or the right resources in place to train it. And I get that.
Yeah.
And there's certain situations where you need to understand what you have and what skill sets you can afford to bring on and what skill sets you just cannot afford to be without.
Yeah.
And like that guy was a perfect example of having the skill sets that we couldn't afford to bring on board because I didn't have the resources in place to give him 100% of the attention that he needed to essentially retrain where he was coming from. Right. And that's all based on his own things.
I feel like companies, like they're such a churn and burn kind of organization. hey, look, we got a process. You don't fit the process, get rid of them, blah, 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 whatever it is, right? However, some of these companies look at it. But honestly, I feel like if you slow down, you hire the right person, you can have them around for a longer time, but also it not only like you save a lot of money and
Big
you
time.
also save time, right? You can continue to evolve as a company if you're not sitting here having to train new employees. You know what I mean? I think you got to put a little bit of focus to hiring the right person.
Yeah, and here's the thing: a lot of people are looking for that A player that's going to bring it up from day one. That's a rock star. And like, listen, I get it. If you find that person, cool. Chances are you're not. That's not 98% of the people that are out there. You have to be realistic with what you're bringing on board. And honestly, I would prefer to have people that, I'm not going to say they're mediocre performers, but they're performing at par. Because if I have a team of those, I know consistency. I have that consistency from the performance, so I'm not going to have issues. And it makes being able to make those shifts easier, and having, once again, going back to delegating different tasks, it makes it a lot easier. You're going to have all that tribal knowledge from knowing how to do the system. I would rather have like a team of average players, because at that point I could always elevate their game. I can coach them up and we can get better. A lot of people don't realize how much 1% better a day is to a person that like starts off up here, but essentially is going to plateau. A team that moves forward and can perform at a good level can constantly increase their performance. And as a leader, as an owner, that performance is consistent. You know what you're getting. So you can plan around that and be able to make those shifts and adjustments as needed.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely important, man, to make sure that you have consistent performers and then you kind of elevate that performance as you go on, right? That way you can continue the progress as a company.
Oh yeah, big time. And I think that's like a good topic for us to leave off on. I'm actually pretty excited. We can use this topic for our next podcast. If anybody out there has different options or different questions or wants us to touch base on something different, feel free to let us know. But yeah, Joey, I want to say thank you for stopping in like always.
Yeah, man. There's tons of fires out there, man. If anybody wants to put some in front of us so we can discuss, I love to talk about it, man. So send them our way.
Big time. All right, guys. Take care.
All right, man. Later.
And that brings us to the end of today's Obvious Leadership episode. Remember, every great leader starts with one step, and you're already on your way. Small changes lead to significant impact. Until next time, keep leading with purpose, and remember that leadership is the key to unlocking extraordinary results.